I know a woman who's been waking up at 3 in the morning for 12 years. Same time, almost every night. Wide awake, heart racing, mind already running tomorrow's to-do list. She figured it was just her age. It wasn't. I spent over 20 years as a registered nurse. One of the quietest things I saw, patient after patient, was a shortage of a single mineral. Not rare, not exotic. Magnesium. Ordinary magnesium, sitting in the dirt under your fingernails if you've been in the garden today. Researchers estimate close to half of adults in this country fall short of what they need. It's a quiet shortage. Doesn't always show on a standard blood test. Your body borrows from your bones just to keep blood levels looking normal. And one of the first places that shows up is sleep. Falling asleep fine, then waking at 3 in the morning, wired for no reason you can name. There's a real mechanism behind that. Magnesium works on the same brake system in your brain that keeps you calm enough to stay asleep. When it runs low, the brake weakens. We're going through 12 foods today. Everyone carries real amounts of this mineral. Wait until you get to number 6. That one is the direct story behind the 3 a.m. wake-up. I'll say this plainly. Nothing I share today is a diagnosis or a prescription. If you're waking every night, talk to your doctor. Some causes of broken sleep need more than a grocery list. This is what the research says, and what 20 years of nursing taught me to notice. Let's start with the one most of you already have in the pantry. Let's start right here, pumpkin seeds. If you carved a pumpkin last fall and pitched the seeds into the compost, well, I understand the impulse. But you tossed out the richest source of magnesium in your whole kitchen. Ounce for ounce, nothing else on this list beats them. Not the almonds, not the spinach, nothing. We're talking somewhere near 150 milligrams in a single ounce. That's more than a third of what most adults need for the whole day, from one small handful. For women, it gets closer to half. Here's why that matters for sleep. Deep in your nervous system, there's a signal called GABA. Think of it as your brain's brake pedal. When it fires properly, your thoughts slow, your body eases, and sleep can actually take hold. Magnesium's job is keeping that brake pedal responsive, making it a little easier for that calming signal to actually land where it needs to. There's a second signal, NMDA, more like the gas pedal, keeping your mind alert, turning things over, running that 3 a.m. grocery list. Magnesium leans against that pedal too, easing the pressure off. Brake assist and gas pedal, both, from one mineral growing in a garden bed. That's a fair bit of work for something most of us have been throwing in the compost bin for years. Potent, that's really the only word for it. I grow pumpkins mostly for the vines, stubborn things, wandering clean across the whole bed if you let them, tangling into the tomatoes every single year no matter how firmly I tell them not to, but I save the seeds now. Rinse them, dry a day on a towel, roast low with a bit of salt. The jays usually find the tray before I do, if I leave it on the porch rail too long. Zinc rides along with the magnesium in pumpkin seeds too, and the two minerals appear to lean on each other for a good deal of the same nervous system work. Calming, steadying, whatever word you want to put to it. People have been eating these seeds this way for a long, long time, ground into flour, tossed into stews, going back centuries in parts of Mexico and Central America, long before anyone had a name for magnesium at all. A small handful, about a quarter cup, covers a meaningful piece of what your body needs for the day. Preliminary research also points to a modest amount of tryptophan in pumpkin seeds working alongside the magnesium, though that piece is still being studied and shouldn't be overstated. Sprinkle them over a salad, stir them into oatmeal, or just eat them straight off the tray, the way I usually end up doing. A lot of us eat a good deal of calcium, dairy, fortified foods, supplements, without eating anywhere near as much magnesium alongside it. The two work as a pair. Calcium does the tightening, magnesium does the loosening. Lean too far toward one without the other, and the balance tips. I don't fuss over exact numbers. I just make sure something magnesium-rich lands on the plate most days, and let the arithmetic sort itself out. Almonds. Every muscle in your body works like a tug-of-war rope. Calcium pulls it tight. That's the contraction. Magnesium is the one who lets go of the rope. That's the release. If magnesium's running low, the rope stays a little too tight, even at night. That's your legs twitching right when you're trying to drift off, or that Charlie horse that wakes you up out of a dead sleep. I've had folks tell me their legs won't settle once the lights go out. Restless, achy, that crawling feeling under the skin. Researchers studying restless leg symptoms in older adults have looked at magnesium alongside vitamin B6 for exactly this, with encouraging, though still limited, results. It's not a cure. It's a piece worth trying, especially since it's just food on a plate. Almonds carry a little tryptophan of their own, too, plus a good dose of vitamin E, which doesn't tie directly to sleep but matters for plenty else. I don't really think of almonds as a sleep food, if I'm honest. I think of them as a food that happens to help, right alongside the dozen other things it's already doing for you. A single ounce, about 23 almonds, gets you a fair piece of the way toward a full day's magnesium. Pair it with a bit of protein and you've got a decent bedtime habit. Not a heavy one. Soaking them overnight softens them a touch too, if the crunch bothers your teeth the way it started to bother mine. Not many plants give you both the calm and the release in the same bite. I keep a jar of these on the counter. Unsalted, plain, nothing fancy needed. Almonds have been cultivated for a remarkably long stretch of human history, some of the oldest orchards on record. That kind of staying power in a food usually means something. It held up generation after generation because it was worth the trouble of growing. Almond milk, for what it's worth, carries only a fraction of the magnesium you'd get from the whole nut. Most of what matters gets left behind in the pulp. If it's the mineral you're after, reach for the almond itself, not the carton. Raw almonds roasted at home, in a dry pan over medium heat for about 5 minutes, tastes like something else entirely compared to the bag from the store. That's a small thing, but small things add up when you're trying to build a habit. Something worth doing should be worth doing with a bit of care. Spinach is a cool weather crop out here. It'll shrug off a light frost and keep right on growing, which always surprises the folks new to gardening. I want to say it was my grandmother who taught me to steam it rather than boil it, though it might have been an aunt. Either way, she was right, and I've been doing it her way for decades without ever really questioning it. You can tuck spinach seed into the ground in early spring and again in fall, and get 2 whole harvests out of the same patch of soil in a single year. Not many vegetables offer that kind of generosity, and I don't take it for granted. Boiling pulls a good share of the magnesium straight out of the leaf and into the water most of us pour right down the drain. Steaming, or a quick sauté, keeps far more of it where it belongs. A small practical habit, and it costs you nothing. Though if you do boil your greens for something else, do save that water for a soup base. Waste not, want not. Cooked spinach also carries folate and a fair bit of vitamin K, working alongside the magnesium. Some researchers have looked at magnesium's role in keeping the body's internal clock, the one that decides when you're tired and when you're not, running on something closer to schedule. Evidence there is still early, but it's a reasonable piece of the puzzle, and it's not asking you to change much about how you already eat. It's a generous plant besides. 1 packet of seed, sown thick along a bed, will feed a household for weeks if you keep cutting it back. Cut and come again. The old-timers called it. The more you harvest, the more it seems to want to give you. A half cup, cooked down from what looks like an armful raw, gets you a genuinely useful amount. God's own thrift, if you ask me. A whole bed of leaves collapsing down into something so concentrated. It carries a fair bit of iron, too, which the body absorbs better alongside a little vitamin C. A squeeze of lemon over the top does more good than most people realize. Small pairings like that, learned over a lifetime of cooking, tend to matter more than any single ingredient on its own. Swiss chard and kale grow through much of the same season and offer a similar boost if spinach isn't your preference. I rotate between all 3 most weeks, more out of what's ready in the bed than any real plan. Variety in the greens you eat tends to cover more ground than any one perfect leaf could on its own. Cortisol is your body's alarm clock hormone, useful in the morning, a problem at 11 at night when it should be winding down and instead it's still ringing. Magnesium status has been linked in a number of studies to how well that alarm actually quiets down as evening comes on, particularly in people dealing with ongoing stress. I saw this so often at the bedside, patients whose bodies simply would not let go of the day, exhausted and wide awake at the same time. Wired and tired, some of them called it, which always struck me as exactly the right phrase. Cashews bring magnesium and zinc together in the same handful, and the two minerals appear to lean on each other for a lot of the same nervous system work. Not a miracle pairing, just a sensible one, the way most of what grows tends to work. Several things doing their part together, rather than one thing doing everything alone. An ounce, roughly 18 cashews, is a reasonable evening portion. Any more than that, and you're eating dinner twice, which I'll admit I have done more than once, out here on a slow evening with a good book and no intention of stopping at 18. Cashews don't grow anywhere near this climate. They're a tropical tree nut, imported from a good deal further south than my little corner of Oregon. I buy mine raw at the co-op and roast them myself in a dry pan for a few minutes before I eat them. Changes the flavor a good deal, and it's a small ritual I've come to enjoy on a slow afternoon. Cashew butter is worth a mention too for anyone not keen on chewing a handful of whole nuts. Spread thin on a slice of apple or a cracker, it carries most of the same benefit in a form that's easier going down. Steady blood sugar and a full stomach matter more to your sleep than most folks realize. Wake up hungry at 3 in the morning, and it's awfully hard to talk yourself back to sleep on an empty stomach. Edamame brings magnesium and a genuine amount of protein into the same pod, which is a fairly rare combination for a plant this simple. These are young soybeans, picked before they've had the chance to fully mature and harden. That's really the only difference between edamame and the dried soybean sitting in a bag at the store. Timing, nothing more. Preliminary research has also looked at the plant compounds in edamame, isoflavones, for a possible gentle role in sleep quality, though I'd call that evidence early rather than settled. I wouldn't build a whole routine around that piece specifically. The magnesium and protein alone are reason enough to keep a bag of these in the freezer. A half cup, shelled, makes a fair evening snack on its own. A pinch of sea salt, nothing more. Simple. Steam them frozen straight from the bag, and you've got something ready in about 5 minutes, which suits me fine most evenings. If your grocery store doesn't carry it, most Asian markets will, usually tucked away in the freezer section near the other frozen vegetables. Chickpeas and lentils offer a similar, if slightly smaller boost, if edamame's hard to track down where you live. Variety matters more than any single food on this whole list. It's got a fair bit of fiber too, which does its own quiet part in keeping digestion steady. A body that's uncomfortable rarely sleeps well, whatever the cause. That's not something research needs to tell me. 20 years of nursing settled that one a long time ago. And here we are. Number 6, the banana. There's a chain of conversions running in your brain, from late afternoon into evening. Tryptophan, an amino acid from food, gets converted first into serotonin, and then serotonin gets converted into melatonin, the hormone that actually signals lights out. Magnesium supports a key step early in that chain, helping the first conversion move the way it should. And bananas happen to carry both a modest amount of tryptophan and the magnesium that helps the process along. This is, plainly, the real story behind the title of this video. Wake at 3 in the morning often enough, and it's worth asking whether that conversion counter has what it needs, most days, to do its work properly. Age plays a part too. The counter tends to slow down a bit as we get older, which is part of why sleep changes so much after 50 or 60. Potassium comes along for the ride as well, and it's the mineral most people already associate with bananas, even if they've never thought about the magnesium sitting right alongside it. Potassium and magnesium tend to work in tandem more often than not, each one propping the other up. A banana's a modest source next to pumpkin seeds or almonds. What it offers instead is convenience, no prep, no cooking, a peel, and you're done. Older folks especially, or anyone recovering from a rough patch, tend to tolerate it easily, gentle as it is on a sensitive stomach. Not many foods ask this little of you. Slice it into oatmeal, or just eat it standing at the counter the way I usually do. Either way, it's doing more than most people give it credit for. Riper bananas, the ones with a bit of brown speckling most people turn their nose up at, carry a slightly different balance of nutrients than the greener ones, though the magnesium itself holds fairly steady either way. That tug-of-war rope we talked about with the almonds back a few minutes ago, potassium plays into it too, right alongside the magnesium and calcium. It's rarely just one mineral doing the whole job by itself. Bananas won't grow out here, of course. Far too cold, far too wet through most of the year. I'll admit there's something a little humbling about that. Growing nearly everything else I need and still depending on a truck from somewhere warm for this one. Provision comes in more than one form, I suppose. Blood sugar that dips too low overnight can pull a person straight out of sleep, same as a shortage of magnesium can. Black beans bring magnesium and a slow, steady kind of fiber into the same bowl, which helps keep blood sugar from swinging sharply through the night rather than spiking and then crashing while you're trying to rest. Researchers studying patients with diabetes have looked specifically at magnesium's connection to sleep hormones and insomnia symptoms in that group and found a meaningful relationship worth paying attention to. It stands to reason the body's handling of blood sugar and its handling of magnesium seem to lean on a lot of the same machinery. I'll say this clearly because it matters here, especially if you're managing diabetes or you're on insulin or other blood sugar medication. Loop your doctor in before you make any real changes to your diet. Fiber and blood sugar timing can interact with medication in ways worth discussing properly, and that's not something I'd want you sorting out on your own from a video. Dried beans, soaked overnight, and simmered slow the next day taste like something else entirely compared to whatever comes out of a can. I know that's more effort than most folks want on a weeknight, and canned is perfectly fine. Besides, just give it a good rinse first to cut back on the sodium. A half cup, cooked, is an easy addition to almost anything: a soup, a bowl, a simple side. Not glamorous, just quietly useful, the way most beans are. Pinto beans and kidney beans carry a similar amount of magnesium if black beans aren't to your taste. And if beans generally don't agree with your stomach, a long soak beforehand, with the water changed once or twice, tends to help a good deal. It's an old trick, but a reliable one. Beans have fed more of the world for longer than almost any other single food I can think of. Cheap, filling, storable through a whole winter without spoiling. There's a reason they've never gone out of style, whatever the food trends of a given decade happen to say. I keep a full row of them in the pantry, jars lined up neatly by kind, and it's about the cheapest, most reliable insurance against a bare cupboard that I know of. Practical, unfussy. Exactly the sort of food I trust most. This one's been feeding people in the Andes for thousands of years, long before it turned up in grocery stores here. Whole grain, technically a seed if you want to split hairs about it, gluten-free, and a genuinely useful source of magnesium in its own right. I've grown it exactly once, out of stubbornness more than good sense. It didn't much care for our wet springs. I'll leave the growing of this one to the Andes and just enjoy what shows up at the store. There's an odd little phenomenon nutrition researchers have puzzled over. A small amount of carbohydrate eaten alongside protein can act almost like a doorman, waving tryptophan through into the brain ahead of the other amino acids that usually crowd the entrance. Quinoa, being both a grain and a modest protein source, does a bit of both jobs at once, all in the same spoonful. It also happens to carry a bit of iron and a full set of the amino acids your body can't make on its own, which is unusual for a plant. Most grains fall a little short there. This one doesn't. Simple. That's the word I'd use for a food that solves two problems in one pot. A half cup, cooked alongside your vegetables at dinner, does real, quiet work. Give it a good rinse before you cook it. Quinoa carries a natural bitter coating that washes away easily under cold water, and skipping that step is the most common reason people don't care for it the first time they try it. Compared to white rice, it holds on to a good deal more of its original nutrition, magnesium included, since so little gets stripped away in the processing. The protein in it matters more as we get older, keeping muscle on the frame the way it should be kept. Nobody talks about that enough. We worry over bones and hearts, and not nearly enough over the muscle that holds the whole business upright and moving through the day. Picture a garden hose after you've shut off the tap. It relaxes, eases back, no longer under pressure. Your blood vessels do something similar when magnesium and potassium are both doing their job properly. Avocado happens to carry a fair amount of both, tucked inside that rich, buttery flesh most of us go through in about 30 seconds flat with a spoon. A tense body doesn't fall asleep easily. That's not folklore either. It's a good part of why relaxation and breathing exercises show up so often in sleep advice. Food can play a quiet, supporting role in that same general direction, even if it's not doing the whole job on its own. Traditionally, folks have leaned on potassium-rich foods for this kind of gentle, whole-body ease. The research on magnesium and blood pressure specifically is still developing, but it's a reasonable food-based habit either way, and one that doesn't ask much of you beyond a ripe avocado and a spoon. Half an avocado is a fair serving. Mash it, slice it, whatever suits you. The healthy fat in it also helps your body actually absorb some of the other nutrients sitting alongside it on the plate. A bit of a team player. This one, a ripe one, gives just slightly under gentle pressure at the stem end. Too firm and it's not ready. Too soft and you've missed the window. I keep a couple ripening on the counter most weeks, out of the sun, and move them to the refrigerator once they're ready, to buy myself a few extra days. Mashed with a bit of lime and salt, it makes a decent evening snack on its own, spread over a cracker or a slice of good bread. I keep it plain myself. No need to dress up something that already does its job so well. It browns quick once it's cut open, faster than most folks expect. A bit of lime juice rubbed over the flesh slows that down considerably, and it's a trick that costs you nothing but a few seconds at the counter. Second only to pumpkin seeds on this whole list, ounce for ounce. And magnesium's involved in something like 300 different jobs throughout your body. Think of it as the pilot light behind nearly every appliance in the house. You don't see it working, but nothing much turns on without it, sleep included. These are tiny, tiny seeds, easy to overlook in the pantry next to something showier. I nearly forgot to include them at all, if I'm honest, until I went back and checked the numbers again. Roasting, baking, even simmering, heat doesn't strip much magnesium out of a food, chia included. That's a bit of good news for anyone who'd rather not eat everything raw, and it means a warm baked good can carry real nutrition, not just calories. Stir a tablespoon into oatmeal, into yogurt, into a glass of water if that's your habit. It thickens up on its own after a few minutes into something almost like a pudding. I can't think of many ingredients that ask so little and give back this much. The Aztec and Mayan peoples relied on chia as a staple food, centuries before it turned up on a smoothie bowl anywhere. Flaxseed offers something similar, though it needs to be ground first. Whole flaxseed tends to pass right through the body without releasing much of what's inside it. Chia doesn't have that problem. You can eat it exactly as it comes. That gel it forms once it's wet also seems to help folks feel satisfied a bit longer after eating, which is a pleasant side benefit. Whatever else it's doing. Nothing dramatic. Just one more small, quiet reason to keep a jar of it in the pantry. Dark chocolate. I'll confess, this is the one on the list I look forward to most. A small blessing at the end of a long day, and I don't feel one bit guilty saying so. Something about a square of good chocolate after the dishes are done just feels like the day's been properly closed out. The darker the cocoa, the more magnesium comes along with it. 70% and up is where the real benefit sits. A small square carries a meaningful amount, without carrying the sugar a milk chocolate bar would. It's the cocoa itself doing the work, not the sweetness, which is why the bitter stuff wins out here. One thing worth knowing, dark chocolate does carry a small amount of natural stimulant alongside the cocoa. Keep the portion modest and enjoy it earlier in the evening rather than right at bedtime, if sleep's the goal. It's a treat, not a nightcap. It's a mood lifter besides, which most of us could use a bit more of these days, and there's some real research behind that piece as well, separate from the sleep side of things entirely. An ounce, maybe 2 small squares, is plenty. Savor it. That's really the whole instruction. Cocoa powder itself, the unsweetened kind used in baking, carries even more magnesium than a chocolate bar does, ounce for ounce, since none of it's been diluted with fat or sugar. A spoonful stirred into warm milk, with maybe a touch of honey, makes a decent evening ritual on its own, chocolate bar or not. I've come to think the ritual of it matters nearly as much as the mineral does. Sitting down, unhurried, with something small and good, telling your body the day's winding down. That signal counts for something, whatever's actually happening at the cellular level. And last, dried figs. Figs have been dried and kept through the winter for about as long as people have been growing food on purpose. There's something grounding in that, a food this old, still doing the same quiet work it always did, long before anyone thought to measure what was in it. Drying concentrates everything. A fresh fig is mostly water. Once that water's gone, what's left behind is a small, sweet, remarkably dense little package of minerals, sugar, and fiber, all packed into something you can carry in a coat pocket. A quarter cup carries a genuine amount of magnesium, alongside potassium, and a good bit of fiber. All three seem to work better together than any one of them does alone, at least from what the research on whole foods tends to suggest. The whole plant, working as a team, rather than any single piece of it carrying the load by itself. Chop a couple into your oatmeal, or eat them plain, the way I do most mornings, standing at the counter with the coffee going cold again beside me. A humble little fruit, and I mean that as a genuine compliment. Figs don't much care for this climate, truth be told. They want more sun and less rain than we get out here most years, so mine's a fussy little potted one. I drag into the greenhouse come November. Fresh figs, in season, are a treat in their own right, but it's the dried version that concentrates the magnesium down into something worth counting on. Figs turn up again and again in the diets that researchers tend to point to when they talk about long, healthy lives. The Mediterranean pattern. Mostly plants, good fat, not much fuss. 12 foods in, and that thread runs through more of this list than I planned for when I sat down to write it. So there you have it. 12 foods and one mineral running quietly underneath every single one of them. Pumpkin seeds, almonds, spinach, cashews, edamame, banana, black beans, quinoa, avocado, chia, a square of dark chocolate, a handful of dried figs, none of them exotic, none of them expensive. Most of them you could have in your kitchen by this evening. Now, I want to be honest with you about something. Food alone doesn't fix every sleep problem. It never has. Sleep apnea, chronic pain, certain medications, anxiety that's gone on too long, those need more than a grocery list, and they deserve a real conversation with your doctor, not a video from a stranger on the internet, however well-meaning she might be. What I can tell you is this: a body that's short on magnesium is working against itself at exactly the hour it needs to be working with itself. Closing that gap, even partway, is one of the simpler things you can do for yourself. Simple. Not always easy, but simple. I think about that a good deal out here, tending what grows. The soil doesn't rush anything. It just keeps offering, season after season, whether we're paying attention or not. I've come to see that as a kind of provision, a blessing, if you'll let me call it that, from something a good deal wiser than either of us. Rest matters too, in that same quiet way. It's not laziness, whatever the busier corners of the world might tell you. A body that sleeps well tends a garden better than one running on empty ever could. I learned that the hard way, back in my nursing years, and I've spent most of my retirement trying to live like I actually believe it. Print this list if it helps, or just remember the ones that caught your attention most. You don't need all 12 at once. Start with whichever's already sitting in your kitchen and build from there. That's how most good habits take root anyway. One small, unglamorous choice, repeated often enough that it stops feeling like a choice at all. Here's my question for you, and I mean it. Put it in the comments. Which of these 12 are you actually eating already, without realizing what it was doing for you after dark? I'd like to know. I read every one. If this helped you understand your own nights a little better, stay a while longer. Subscribe if you haven't. There's more growing out here than just vegetables. Sleep well tonight, dearie, and God bless.